My life has been like an experiment. Instead of focusing on what other people tell me to do or what's safe, I have chosen intuition as a way of living. That's the most powerful, untapped resource that there is. If you don't try listening to it, you will never know what it could do for you. I was living in a tiny apartment. I had no money. I had no savings. I was able to kind of reinvent myself. When you go into a breathwork session, we start recalling memories that we forgot. We start feeling emotions that were buried way down deep. There is nothing like feeling truth. And the breath is the delivery system to bring all of these thoughts, all of these emotions into the present moment. You can tap into your own version of genius.
Hello, beautiful humans. Welcome back to the Know Thyself podcast, where every single week we get the privilege and opportunity to sit down with a brilliant mind and open heart, somebody that can help us know ourselves in the world at deeper and deeper levels. My guest today is a dear friend, somebody who is an intuitive coach and a mentor for sensitive visionaries. She is the co-founder of Awaken Breathwork, where she travels the world with her partner Lucas and creates these beautiful containers for people to tap into the truth of who they are and heal generational trauma, and guiding them through these amazing, powerful breathwork journeys that I've been to a few times. And they've been, I would say, very psychedelic without the drugs. They're so impactful. And just Helle, on a personal note, is somebody that, for me, there's individuals that you meet in life who sound intelligent. And then there's people that you meet that you feel like are weaving with life in a deeper intelligence. And I feel like Helle is somebody that is very connected and has very deep codes for humanity and activating and raising the consciousness on this planet. And she's somebody that I feel like is very much embodied in the frequency in which she's here to bring. So without further ado, my guest today is Hellè Weston.
Thank you, Andre. That was the words I needed to hear. A really sweet reminder. Thank you.
I'm so excited to co-create in this conversation today. I think that you are such a powerful channel. And, we were chatting a little bit before this podcast of sometimes whenever we go onto podcasts and, we want to provide value for people, right? And that can bring up nerves. Every time that I have a conversation with you, it seems to go to this very deep place that is super in alignment with the themes that are present in both of our lives. And so I'm excited for this conversation to be witnessed and shared with the whole Know Thyself family today.
Me too. And truly respect on everything that you've created. I absolutely love seeing every episode and the depth that you bring. And I think that was a bit of why I felt some nerves, because I'm like, Andre goes deep. We're going to go there today. Yeah. And like you said, I want to bring value. And I think something I would like to offer up as a starting point, if that's okay, is when I said to you just then, that was the words that I needed to hear. Something that has been swirling in my awareness over the last 24 hours and also far beyond as well is the difference between that mental intelligence that comes through gathering information from outside of ourselves and that deeper level of intelligence. So you reflecting that back, I'm like, yes, that's the medicine that I'm here to bring. And sometimes I question it because it's easy, and accumulating knowledge from outside can feel hard, right? It's arduous, it's laborious. We have to go and gather and learn and dissect and analyze. And I love learning and doing all of that as well. But sometimes I think I have undermined the potency and power of allowing that natural intuitive intelligence to come out and guide, and to know that like it can be very heavy hitting and deep and it's enough. So thank you for seeing that and inviting that out. And I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah. I mean, we're here now. This is it. I think that's something that you're such a powerful activator for others, because you found so deeply within yourself, is the power of your own intuition. And so I would love to start that, with that in this conversation. What do you feel like is our intuition, and how do we gain clarity in refining our ability to listen to that inner guiding voice?
Yeah, I mean, there are many different definitions that we could ascribe to intuition. But from my perspective, intuition is something that every single one of us has access to. It's natural as having ears to hear, eyes to see, the ability to feel. And I think so many of us have become habituated in relying on our five senses as a form of feedback and a way to navigate our lives. But that intuitive intelligence is a more subtle level of feeling. So while we have the eyes to see, we also have the inner eye, the ability to subtly see, to see with our mind's eye, to envision, to create through our imagination, and to see pictures before they become a part of our physical reality, to see with our eyes. And it's the same with our ability to hear. You know, we can hear externally, but we can also listen and hear from within. And that could come in the form of thoughts. It could come in the form of a subtle internal whispering that comes from some mysterious ethereal place. And the only way that we can describe it is, I heard it, right? I heard it from somewhere. And then we can have our subtle level of feeling, that ability to feel when something is right or wrong, whether it's for us or not for us, whether it feels like truth or illusion and distortion, whether it feels like home, whether it feels safe. And not just safe at that logical level, but a deeper level of safety that goes far beyond what our rational minds can explain. And these are just some examples of the ways that our intuition is always offering us feedback to go through our lives and align with our dharma, our truth, our purpose, our ability to access not just more in terms of the breadth, but more in terms of depth. To go deeper into the most simple things, I believe requires us to be able to perceive through our intuitive, subtle senses.
Yeah, it's powerful. I think that in the pursuit of creating the life that we want, this is like our life's work, is refining, getting clear on removing what's in the way of listening and feeling into what is that true voice? What is it that our deepest sense of self actually wants and desires from life, instead of what a lot of the noise we've accumulated is telling us that we should get.
Exactly.
And so how have you on your path been able to clarify that voice, be able to really discern what is that voice versus what is somebody else's voice that sounds like it's my voice?
Yeah, that has been a roller coaster ride. And I feel for every human on earth who has to go through this discernment process, because it is like a spiraling process. It's not linear. And that is the nature of intuition, and I guess what we could call a spiritual path, or a God, source, universe guided path. It's not like we're going from A to B in a straight line. It's going to take us to some really trippy places. So one of the defining moments in my life, I suppose, that I made a shift was when I was, I think it was, 21. This was 2011. And I was a fashion stylist, and I had already been very aware of different personal development principles, practices, books. Like, I was already a seeker at heart. And I had applied manifestation principles in my own life to step into a career as a fashion stylist. And I was excited. I was inspired. I felt on purpose. And then I didn't. Something shifted for me, and I was like, this is superficial. This is really unfulfilling. My soul doesn't feel seen or met. And I feel like I'm almost contributing to consumerism and materialism and this machine of looking good. And why am I even doing this? Like, what is this actually about for me? So to kind of put like a little highlighter around the point here, I started to question my motives for doing what I was doing. And I began to recognize that for me, what was actually deep down driving my decision to pursue a career as a stylist was, one, yes, I was creative and into fashion and enjoyed that way of expressing myself. But another part of it, which was actually the bigger driver, like the rocket fuel of the machine, was wanting to be impressive to my dad. And at that point in my life, I had a very small, limited relationship with my father. I had been estranged from him for 10 years, and I had just gotten in touch with him a couple of years earlier for the first time in my adult life. So he met me as a young woman. We'd lost contact when I was a child. And my dad is super creative, and he is also very intellectual, and he's an achiever, right? He's an Aries, he's driven, he's like, what are you doing with your life kind of energy. And I love that about him. But the little girl in me who lost her daddy was wanting to impress her daddy. And that was a really painful but also empowering recognition, to realize that, whoa, I really care what my dad thinks of me. And it's so deep in there that I will do things unconsciously in my life. I will invest enormous amounts of energy into creating something that I think will get his attention and get his love. And in that recognition process, I knew, obviously, I think, that wasn't in alignment with me. That was a form of outsourcing my self-worth, my power. I was looking for validation, and I knew that I needed to course correct and find my way home to what I wanted. So I stepped back from styling, and most of the people around me at that time thought I was nuts. They were like, you're doing so well. You have a gift. Like, you're really talented. You're just getting your momentum. Why would you step away? This is so you. And I was like, it's not me. There's something deeper that you don't know yet that I know that feels like my highest truth. And I need to give that a chance to come out and to guide my life. So that was a wild time. I was living in a tiny apartment. I had like no money. I had no savings. I was dealing with also health issues. So a part of the stress that was coming with feeling so out of alignment, and there was a lot of trauma that I had to heal along the way. This is like the roller coaster stuff. I just stepped away from it all, and I became like the total hermit. And I would just read all day, every day, stacks and stacks of books. I didn't have enough money to even buy books. So I would go to the public library and I would find books on spirituality. I became really into hypnosis, and I would read books about hypnotherapy. And that eventually led me to doing a hypnotherapy course. And that was the beginning of, here we are more than a decade later, giving myself permission to become the seeker that I've always been. And I'm still that. I'm still always learning. I still feel like I don't know anything. But I keep allowing myself to be that weirdo that I was like too afraid to be back then. And knowing that I don't know is actually a really freeing place to be, because it keeps me curious. And it's actually, once you get comfortable with not knowing, it becomes a form of wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like a really important part of that process was just giving yourself permission not to fully know that you want to create a certain lifestyle or become a certain person, but that you want to move in a direction that is different than the current one that you're in.
Exactly.
I think that one of the most powerful forces in the human psyche is the need to stay consistent with our view of ourselves. So if we're in a position in our life where we've been doing something habitually repeated over a period of time, and it becomes our identity in the way that we like others to perceive us, in the way that we perceive ourselves, then we're going to stay consistent with that behavior and the lifestyle and the job or relationships that we're in that tie into that identity. And it sounds like the first piece is the awareness that there's deeper motives driving behind what is actually going on within my mind and within my heart. And that once you see that and you have the intuition that actually I like what I'm doing, I'm kind of good at it, but ultimately my truest nature, there's a deeper motive here where it's like correlated to needing approval from my dad or, whoever's listening to this. There's so many different possible motivating factors that we hold at a subconscious level that we're not consciously aware of that are driving our behavior.
Yeah.
And so the practices that have supported you to be able to actually get to that point, have that awareness, and then have the courage and chutzpah to like move in the different direction.
And it requires some.
It does. And then you go into this part where a lot of times, and it's like it's a common thing on the spiritual path once you start to have your awakening, to where it can kind of feel a little lonely at times. You can kind of feel alone because you're removing yourself from what you've been so accustomed to, and the people and the places and the circumstances that have been comfortable for you. And so removing yourself outside of that comfort zone, which our identity is our comfort zone, can feel like a little lonely for people. So what has been your journey like in that period of time? How did you find solace and comfort in creating that new identity and that new change of awareness for yourself? Because a lot of people struggle with feeling like, okay, I have this awareness, I want to move into a different direction, but it's so hard because no one around me is on the same wavelength.
Yeah, that's huge. And I see it all the time, right? It's a struggle. And I think the first place I want to start is to say you have to accept that you will lose the pillars of your old house, your old temple that you created. And you have to accept that it's an outdated structure and it needs to be demolished. And that process is something that every single one of us will go through. You are not alone in that. We've all gone through it in our own way. And it looks different for different people. Some people lose their relationships with their family. Some people lose their friends. Some people lose their career. Some people lose their health. Some people lose their physique. Like whatever it may be, there's going to be a Kali demolishing process so that your rebirth can happen. Yeah. And for me, it looked like losing approval and the impressive path. It looked like losing all of my friends. I literally had no friends. I had Lucas. Fortunately, that was like a massive help for me along the way. But I see a lot of people who lose their relationships as well. And that, again, if you're going through that, like the listeners, that is not uncommon. A lot of people go through that. If you can accept that it is a normal part of the path of rebirthing yourself, it can help a lot, I think, like the normalizing factor, because so much of our suffering comes through judging what we're going through as wrong. Like, why is this happening to me? It shouldn't be this way. And this is why, for example, I love Byron Katie's work, because we tell ourselves so many stories about what shouldn't be happening. And if we were just to simply question that and go, is that true? Is it true that you shouldn't lose all your friends? Well, for me, it was absolutely not true that I shouldn't. I should have lost all my friends because it created a lot of space for me to focus inside, for me to learn to love myself, for me to learn to fall in love with my own company, which I absolutely do. I love being alone. And it also gave me the space to quieten the external inputs and listen inside to what I wanted. And from there, I was able to kind of reinvent myself. Because the thing is, when you have these old structures in place in your life, whether it is friendships or a relationship or a job or whatever, these external structures are linked to you being a certain way. It's like an ecosystem. The ecosystem thrives and wants to remain exactly as it is. If you want to become something new, you're going to continually come up against the tension of all of these existing structures wanting you to revert back to your old self. So we all know what it's like, right? To have someone be like, you've changed, or I miss the old you, like those classic things that people describe going through. And so you need to give yourself the space to change.
Yeah.
And a part of that is like, you're going to disappoint people. You're going to have to set boundaries. you are going to have to not make sense.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what, the old cliche, right? The butterfly has to go through in order to get to that point. It has to not make sense. It's the caterpillar that goes to the mush and it's like, what the fuck is going on? You've lost it. Well, yeah, and I'm losing it to find something better.
Yeah.
So that has been massive. And then I think having practices in your life is really important as well. Learning to trust your intuition. It's not something that just happens. It's a process. And so people that I work with these days are often coming to me with questions like, how can I learn to trust my intuition more deeply? How can I let go of control? And how can I step more into what I know will fulfill me? And they're like, can you give me like how to do it now? Like, can we just get there? Can you do some energy work on me? And then I'll just be there, right? I'm like, what are your practices? What do you have established in your life to allow you to continually cultivate who you desire to be and connect to that place that you say matters to you so much? And this kind of connects back into the old, why are you doing what you're doing? Mm-hmm. Because when I hear people say, I want to connect to my intuition, or I don't want to suffer anymore, like I'm so tired of feeling like crap. Okay, well, here is a practice that you can do that will help you. And then they don't do it.
Yeah.
And so that makes me go, why are you wanting this? Like, what's your motive there? Is it to really deepen your connection to yourself as a way of life? Or is it to get away from this discomfort because you're having like an existential tantrum, right? So nothing comes without some level of process or work, devotion, nothing juicy and good in life. And I don't mean that in a way of like everything has to be hard and arduous, but I do mean if you say you care about something, whether it be your art, your purpose, having a beautiful relationship, your health, your fitness, whatever it may be, if you don't have a process in place to cultivate that thing, you have to question why you're even talking about it, giving it lip service, but not going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's so easy to romanticize and just like have that that lip smacking of saying that you know, everyone loves to talk about the life that they want to create. And, it's easy to talk about. It's a whole nother thing to actually change your behavior. So wherever our listeners are at, whether you're a baby caterpillar or you're an adult caterpillar, or you're just going into the mush and you're like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Finding that what you spoke to, that surrender and acceptance for where our path is, and to get actually clear on why we want what we want. And that it's going to actually require you to change your behavior to get a different lifestyle and change who you are, because, you either have to subdue yourself to the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. And discipline weighs ounces and regret weighs tons, And so it's like, are you going to stay in the comfort zone that you've been in for a long period of time for another 5, 10 years, 15 years? It might take time for you to really get fed up with the current situation of your life, where you're at externally or internally, before you really have that pain, that kind of fire that kicks on and puts you into action, into changing that. But I think it's just so powerful what you spoke to about getting clear on really what it is that you want. Are you in the position where you're ready to make that change? And what are you waiting for? Allow this conversation, this be an invitation to you to actually take that action, make that phone call, send that message, do that practice, take that retreat, read that book, those things that we feel like are pushing us in those directions that we've kind of been putting off because we have so many distractions, is just allow this to be an invitation for all the listeners to move in that direction.
Yeah. And I think I can hear it now. The people who are going to be like, I really want it, but why don't I do it? Yeah. Like, I know why I want it. I know my motives for going after this thing that I want, but I keep self-sabotaging. And that's where an expanded level of inquiry needs to come in, which is, well, there's something else that you want more. And why do you want that? Like, what's there?
Yeah.
And that's also, we might describe that as shadow work. Shadow work isn't just looking at the things that we think are bad or shameful or embarrassing. Shadow work is looking into the unconscious and recognizing the drivers that are hidden. They're like the sneaky little angel and devil on your shoulder that are like, do it, don't do that. And if you can make that conscious, you can actually start to renegotiate your internal ecosystem, right? The external ecosystem of your entire life, and go, oh, I've been plugged in to this program. In my case, it was like of impressing my dad. In order to make change over here of wanting to feel more happy and healthy, I actually need to go over here and work on that one and unplug from that and do the healing there and like recognize the pain and hold myself through that process. And it might not be like a 1 hour life coaching session that does that. It might be months or even years of deep fucking soul work that is required to unplug fully and go in the direction of your alignment.
Yeah. Just being willing to understand what you spoke to earlier, that like very well for this new life that you want to create for yourself, you're going to have to release the old pillars and structure that you've created, that ecosystem, which is so attached to what we spoke to about the ego identity that we hold of how we view ourselves. And there's something deeper that's motivating you to stay where you're at, which I think that's a powerful reframe and an invitation. How important do you feel it is to have the balance between, I feel like to make the changes that we want to make in life, often it's not that we need new information. We have so much information. A lot of us know how to get in shape and lose weight or build muscle. It's just the fact that we don't do it. There's that knowing and doing gap. So it's not really a lack of information that we have. We have more information than we've ever had on the history of this planet. Yet there's so much more misery, especially here in the States. And so how important do you feel it is to have the information, like the logical side of the steps that you need to take, but then also there's the balance of the feeling process of moving into that direction that you feel like you should go in. So I feel like there's just that balance of the left and the right of how we can listen to both of them, not overly focus on one in the pursuit of creating the life that we want to live.
Okay, so the way that I have chosen personally to live my life over the past decade plus of finding my way into greater alignment is through something that I call structured intuition. So my life has been like an experiment. And instead of focusing on what other people tell me to do or society's standards of anything or what's safe, avoiding risk, which so many of us do, we're like, I need certainty. I've got to go toward what's reliable. I have chosen to experiment with structured intuition as a way of living and being and directing the course of my decisions in the micro and in the macro, in the small and in the large. So structured intuition is like the marriage between the masculine and the feminine, the left brain and the right brain. It's to understand that information is important. It's essential. Like if we want to live a successful life, we need to learn. And the way that our brains work is, right, we gather data and information and then we organize it. We do something with that. We create patterns, we create shapes, we create forms, we create plans. And that is how life progresses. If we rely only on the information that we get from everybody else, though, and from what we're directly exposed to, what we are going to create is some variation of what already exists around us. And this is where things like privilege comes in, because some of us get a really good head start in life and we have examples all around us. We have maybe parents who teach us really good habits. They teach us how to prioritize the things that are going to set us on a good path in life. Some of us get a good education and some of us don't. Some of us have parents that are really unhealthy, really destructive, really abusive. So that would be the opposite of privilege. It would be a setback potentially. So if we're relying only on information, then we become the product of our environment. And that will dictate the direction of our entire lives. And then there's intuition and that right brain creativity, and what I believe goes more into the spiritual, looking at the fact that there are so many possibilities that haven't yet been brought into form. There are so many ideas that haven't yet been articulated or pieced together to show up in this world that we all live in. So to me, that's like the most powerful untapped resource that there is. I mean, it's incredible. Why would we not want to tap into the library of the infinite? I personally want to. I think everyone should. But when we rely, let's say, okay, only on, I spoke about the intellect and the logic. We rely only on that, we become a product of our environment. Or we swing the other way and we rely only on this infinite source of potential. That is a soupy way to live our lives. And we all, I'm sure, know of, whether it's near or far, we know of some creative person, spiritual person, floaty, flighty person who's always up in the clouds, in ideas land, never really doing much with it, not delivering it into this world to be anything of value. And so a part of living a life guided by structured intuition is to recognize the power of both the left brain and the right brain, the intellect and the heart or the spirit, and to dance between the two in a healthy way on a daily basis. And something that I have come to understand, and this is pretty logical when I like explain it, is that intuition, creativity, and imagination require a delivery system so that they can become something that you and I know to exist. Yeah. Like someone had the idea for this microphone. If they were just in floaty land, lovely, like they thought of this thing that could exist. They need a delivery system, or we could call that a process or a practice, to bring this microphone into existence. Yeah. And then this could sit in someone's garage as like a template, a little experimental thing. So we then need another delivery system, process or practice, in order to bring it out into the public so that people can experience the value of what we've created. And when you combine the two, intuition and intellect or structure, and you have that delivery system in place in your life, i.e. you are taking action, you are taking responsibility for going inside and receiving from the infinite, and then you are going to step into your life and do something with that, you can tap into your own version of genius and experience the fruits of that in life. And I am fascinated by people who are successful, high performers, geniuses. It's something that is so intriguing to me. I'm like, oh, fascinating. Like, why? What makes you do what you do? And honestly, in my experience, it's that. It's people who are not looking for what's already been done. They're innovators. Yeah. They're going into the infinite of like what's possible. Their imagination. We don't even need to consider this a spiritual practice, although I think it's spiritual. To go into the realms of infinite possibility and have a practice that takes you there on a regular basis. For some people, that might be walking. For some people, it's meditation. Maybe it's breath work. Maybe it's morning pages, doing journaling. Maybe it's something else. I don't know. There's infinite ways that we could do that. And we can look at history, and all the geniuses have their practices. But that practice that you choose to have is what's going to allow you to get the ideas, get the downloads, if you want to call it that. And from there, you need to create additional practices that support you to make it real.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that I see. It's like the winning recipe.
Yeah.
And you got to choose your lane, right? Like, how are you going to do it? Where are you going to devote your energy? What do you want to find in the quantum field?
Yeah.
Because there's infinite information and ideas out there.
Yeah.
So find your thing and then get to work on like bringing it through.
So powerful. I'm just resonating with everything that you said so much. I think it's so important to just not operate solely within the logic, because like you said, you're not going to be able to bring your unique genius and frequency into creation because you're just relying on prior information and whatever you've accumulated in your memory. But if you're also just in the soupy field of consciousness and you don't have the ability to anchor it into manifest in the 3D reality, then it's not going to be able to be experienced by other people, which I believe we're here to experience the reflections with one another and to bring forth our gifts. And there's this quote that God's gift to us is more talent, ability, and gifts and resources than we'll ever be able to use in our lifetime. And our gift to God is to bring those forth and as much as possible in our life. And so that balance is, I think, so important. And I think earlier on in your journey, especially, it's really important to get into the heart space before you start to decide and go down your path, because
Absolutely.
if you go in the, if you're going in, you just want to make sure you're going in the right direction or in the direction that feels most true in the moment. Otherwise you're going to have some backpedaling that happens later down the line. I think that it's really powerful when you tap into that space, the quantum leaps that are possible in your life and in your reality, when you operate not just within what you think is possible, but when the area of life you don't even know is possible. There's this like the force of imagination is such a powerful mental faculty that we can cultivate and refine and spend time in. How important for you in those practices and putting yourself in those spaces to receive the codes, the downloads, the insights that become a catalyst for a quantum leap in growth in your life? Because a lot of times, especially when operating in the logic, it's like, all right, I'm going to take this step, then I'm going to take this step, then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do that, and that's going to lead me to this place. But for me, like going into silence, going into nature, doing my practices, that has allowed me to find natural attunement with really what wants to come through me. And then it manifests and comes out and looks like something that I never thought would, and then that then becomes the fertile soil to grow something really powerful and like exponentially grow and be impactful, because it has that unique frequency like we were speaking to. So how in your own personal life or anything that you want to share in terms of like having that possibility of quantum leaps and growth in your life?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So for me, it has started with really simple things. And I feel that many of us try to overcomplicate it, but it could be simple, like having a 10-minute or 20-minute meditation practice. For me, it started with journaling. I began doing journaling every single day. And I mentioned earlier that I was really into hypnotherapy. So earlier in my journey, when I got into studying hypnotherapy, I began doing self-hypnosis. And this is something that anyone could access online. There's so many guided hypnosis audios that you can listen to that will help you to shift your brainwaves to tap into a non-ordinary state, we could call it, which is a different lens of perceiving. So these little steps that you can take to shift how you're perceiving and processing information are a good place to start. And often I hear things like, I don't have time to meditate, or it's really boring and I can't be bothered and I've got so much stuff to do. And so we equate productivity with the laborious doing that we can see with our five senses. But actually what I've found is that a practice that opens you up to this realm of infinite is extremely productive. In fact, it's the most productive thing you could do. And it's not productive to live there, like I was saying, in floaty land, but it is productive to go there on a regular basis. So I was doing my self-hypnosis practices, and that was taking me into these deep, deep states of meditation very quickly. And from there, I began to have really trippy things happen. I started to be able to automatic write, and that's like channeling, we could call it, where I could pick up a notebook, and I could go into a few minutes of self-hypnosis meditation. I learned how to shift my brainwaves very quickly. And then I would pick up my pen and I would just go. And I could write pages and pages of information. And a lot of that information I would then realize was like practical steps and advice that I could take. It's like having your own life coach, oracle, spiritual master that's right there. And I got into this practice of making time for it. And that's really important to kind of link together here. What I'm saying is I actually made the time for it. Yeah. I didn't just do it once. I sat down every day and I did my little ritual of closing my eyes and relaxing my entire body and allowing my brainwaves to start to slow down. And from there, the opening was created. That was the delivery system for Source, God, the universe to work through me. And then I got the downloads that came through on the page, and I began to think about what I could do with it. And I would get little tips and advice. And this is another point that I see people kind of fumble and sabotage in a way, is they get the downloads and they do nothing with it.
Yeah.
Like, why? Why? Please stop doing that if you're listening. And you need to start listening to the guidance that comes through. Because if you don't try listening to it, you will never know what it could do for you. And that's what you were speaking into before about regret. Yeah. Now, you might never know in your mind in this lifetime about what could have happened if you'd followed that inner guidance. But my perspective is that when you pass over, take it with a grain of salt. I believe that then you will know. And I feel that there is a process that we go through when we pass over of reviewing the choices that we not only took, but the ones that we didn't take, and recognizing the doors that could have opened if we had made those choices and listened to that intuition and given that thing a chance that seemed really wild at the time. And I would rather give it a chance now and be like a wild one that just, why not? Like, why not live a little? Why not see what happens? Then live in the known. Live in what everyone else has already done here. We have an opportunity in this life to make an imprint. Like, this is very random, kind of almost a little tangent, but something that trips me out sometimes is I'll walk down the street, and maybe you've had this happen, where you just see a random like shoe or like a baby's piece of clothing or something. And these moments where I see something from a moment in time in a space that I'm in remind me that history lives on in this dimension, and we are all imprinting our own little energy and actions onto the space. But soon we'll be gone. And why not, while we're here, make an imprint on the space that is something different, not just more of the same. So to kind of come full circle here on this, having a practice is a must. And it does not have to be spiritual. I know that when I'm talking, I'm clearly a spiritual person or interested in spirituality. But for you, it could be art. It could be making the space and time to get the blank canvas out, and that represents possibility. And getting the paints and giving it a chance, like doing the thing. And a part of that practice also might be doing things like taking a break from looking at what everyone else is doing and giving yourself a chance to be inspired by new sources. Something that I see a lot of creatives doing that to me are brilliant is finding inspiration in unexpected places. So for example, with musicians, they're not looking at what other musicians in their genre are doing this year. They might find their inspiration in photography books or in nature or in musicians from 20, 30, 40 years ago. And they're running it through their own system, and it's like digesting and it's processing, and then they're adding their own unique spin on it, and it comes out as something completely different. That's another way that we can do that, right?
Yeah.
Bringing imagination and creativity through our own thought process, feeling process, contemplation process, and then out into the world, into form.
Yeah, so beautiful. That process of integration, of having the expanded awareness, putting yourself in a place where you can receive these codes and these insights, and then it's been such a theme throughout this whole podcast, because it's actually the means in which you can make it a reality for yourself, and not just like an insight or something that sounds cool, but a living reality is that process of integration, where a lot of people, especially in various spiritual communities, and plant medicine groups, are addicted to the experience hunting of new insights and new awareness, but there isn't the implementation and integration of bringing it and anchoring it in, and vice versa. Like we spoke to earlier, there's a whole lot of people that are not getting new awareness and have no new insights, and they're just on the hamster wheel of life. So that those practices, and just kind of to put a bow on that for you and for me, let's kind of just share like what those practices are, right? Could be journaling, breathwork, meditation. Are there any other ones that have been really important, impactful for you to cultivate that frequency and the power of integration in your life?
Well, one thing I want to touch on right now, since you brought it up, is people who go into different ceremonies and are on that, they're on the hunt, right, for new insights, downloads, and connection to that vast source of infinite potential. And I just want to say to the listeners that if plant medicine calls you, then of course pursue that. But you don't have to use plant medicines or work with them, if we want to say, to access that. And I have never done ayahuasca, and I'm quite in my flow.
Sure.
And there are a lot of people who have only ever done meditation or only ever sat at their desk with a pen and paper, and they've accessed profound levels of genius and been able to bring it into form. So it's not good or bad. It's not right or wrong. It's another avenue of connection, but the integration is essential. So when you're speaking about like what would be some other practices that would be helpful, I think integration is a practice that includes many practices, but it's essential. If you have a mystical experience of any kind, if you go on a vision quest, if you go and do an ayahuasca ceremony, if you go into a silent meditation retreat for 11 days, it matters what you do following that experience. Another example of that could be fasting.
Yeah.
If you do a fast, the integration practice is so important to extrapolate the value and allow it to build. Because otherwise it's like stop, start, going forward, going back. The integration is where we actually evolve and segue into the next chapter of our lives. And so I think for some people it could be worthwhile. Like if there are any listeners who have been doing a lot of ceremonies lately, maybe this is your sign to consider the value of slowing down and giving yourself a little space between the last ceremony and the next one. And I'm not saying that there shouldn't be a next one because it can be incredible, right? But maybe a little more space.
Yeah.
Maybe exploring what integration practices you could bring in that could support you to turn what you saw and what you felt into your lived experience in your life. And that's the whole chop wood, carry water, after enlightenment comes the humble work.
Yeah.
So what does that look like for you? I don't know. But we need to have habits. We need to have structures for that feminine, creative nature that we all have to flourish.
Yeah. So powerful. And like when I first moved out to LA 6-7 years ago, I was actually like in the community. One of the first times I went to breathwork class that you and Lucas were holding, which was so powerful. And every time you guys facilitate, it's just such a powerful drop-in moment. And those are a ceremony to me. Like every time it's just like so much new insight and a wave, and it's just the breath. Like we have everything. Do you think creation is not going to equip us with everything that's possible for us to live our most expressed life? I think not.
Exactly.
And we are a part of nature, so there are tools around us, you know, and
yeah.
depending on where we're at in our journey, that can be valuable. And not saying they're not. I think they both have been for both of us in periods of our life. But just to not underestimate the power of the breath. And is there anything that you want to speak on to the power of your journey with breathwork and the work that you're doing, and how individuals can see beautiful opening process and integration from just our breath?
Yeah. Well, breath has changed my life. And it's kind of funny, isn't it, that it's right there and we all have it, and
right
yet
we
don't even know how to use it. Yeah, most people don't even know what's possible with their own breath. And that applies to a lot of things in life. It's going deeper into what's already there. So I found that for me, learning to work with my breath created another means of tapping into that vast space that was ignored, unacknowledged, tapping me on the shoulder, being like, hello, like pay attention. There's so much here inside. And so the breathwork that we now share, we have our company called Awaken Breathwork, and we share ceremonies, journeys, different names that we could call it. And typically it's a 1 hour process with the breath. And within that space, brainwaves start to shift. And so we can start to experience a lot of buried, subconscious emotions and memories flooding up to the surface. And there's a lot that goes into that whole thing happening, which we can go into another time. But what is so potent about this practice is giving yourself an opportunity to be with the things that at some point in time, your body and mind decided were not safe to be with. Like that now's not the time. I can't feel this emotion. Now's not the time to express myself that way. If I did, then fill in the blank, this would happen. For some of us, that's like, I would be embarrassed. I would sound silly. I would be rejected. It would cause conflict. It would rock the boat in my family. The list goes on. We've all got our stuff. When you go into a breathwork session, all of that buried material starts to come up. The limbic brain, I was thinking, I'm not going to go into the science right now, but I just want to say this one thing. The limbic brain is the part of the brain that processes memory and emotion. The limbic brain also operates outside of time. So what happened in the past, what's happening in the present, and what's happening in the future are all processed by the limbic brain as like one package that is you and your life. So when you have experiences, let's say in your childhood, that you decided meant something about you, your limbic brain stores that information as a part of your map of reality. So then you go into every new moment and you don't even have to consciously think about it, because this is how incredible your God-given body is, that it will organize all of this for you. So you'll start doing things and you don't even know why you're doing it, but you're doing it because of that thing that happened 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And it's like, it could be subtle tweaks on how you behave, and it's designed to keep you safe. Your brain and body want to keep you safe first and foremost. And after you're safe, then you can figure out the more creative, thriving stuff, right? But a lot of us have survival programs going on that we don't even know about. These run like loops until they're completed. So the body-mind system, which is what I call it, is going to loop and do what it needs to do to keep you safe until it perceives that the threat is gone. If it's an ongoing threat, you're going to have an ongoing survival response. Because we don't often allow ourselves to feel emotions when we're feeling unsafe, like let's say we've got a family member that punishes us if we get upset or something like that, then we're going to shut all of that down. But it doesn't just go away. It lives in the system as an open loop. Like every time I do that, I don't feel safe and therefore I need to adapt. So when we go into the breath work and we start stimulating the limbic brain, these incomplete loops start becoming bigger. They start kind of taking over our experience in the present moment. We start recalling memories that we forgot. We start feeling emotions that were buried way down deep. And so for me personally, I remember my first breathwork session, had no idea what I was getting into. I was like, I like meditation. Let's do it. Like breathing, great. Yeah. Went into it, and within about 15 minutes, I felt like I was witnessing my entire life and feeling the pain of filtering my own self-expression based on a lack of self-love. And I could just feel the pain of living through this filter. Like, it's like a prison, to judge yourself so harshly. And in the process of judging myself so harshly, I realized that in this breathwork session that I was doing this to keep myself safe because I didn't want to be rejected again. But also I could feel that it was causing me so much suffering, and I could see beyond that and feel beyond that into the vast love and embrace of like my dying day. It was a very psychedelic experience, almost like a life review, to go, this perspective has been running your life and you're going to pop out into another moment and you're going to see it this way. And so by being open and allowing my whole system to be like, oh, like this is intense, I also expanded myself enough to access what was beyond it. And then it was like pulling it in.
Yeah.
Like, please give me more of that. And I started to breathe into that. And I, like one breath at a time, allowed my whole system to start to feel in a visceral level what it's like to love myself and to accept myself. And there is nothing like feeling truth. The mind is great, but a lot of us struggle because it's all up here being intellectualized. So for me, the breakthrough has been in bringing it into the body.
Yeah.
And the breath is the delivery system to bring all of these thoughts, all of these emotions, all of these suspended sensations and energies that like are from the past into the present moment, into being felt, and then into being like embodied.
No.
And breathwork isn't just about processing emotions and things from the past. It's also about accessing everything we've been talking about throughout this conversation.
Yeah.
A lot of my clients these days, as well as in my own personal practice, the breathwork practices that we do are about tapping into what could be next and clearing the micro kinks or blocks so that we can keep the stream going. Because even the little things like not setting a boundary or not being fully on board with a project that you're doing, or having a friend or a family member in your life that you're relating to in a way that's not 100% authentic, that can manifest as tension in the body and unhappiness. And so through breath work, we can go in and feel deeply and then clear all of that out. And then a lot of the time the answers come through and it's so clear and simple. And it's like, all along I was making it so complicated and tight, like getting myself all in knots. And there's the solution. I've just got to say no. Or I've just got to let that person know that I don't want to do that. Or actually, I've been trying to do the project this way with this particular person. It's not really feeling like it's in flow. So I'm going to do that idea.
Yeah.
And that's quantum leaps.
Yeah. Wow.
Life
full circle.
hack.
Yeah. So good. Wow. There's just so many nuggets in what you share. So first of all, thank you. I think that the deeper we go on our path, the more subtle these things become. It's like the more subtle they are to work with. And there's a lot of dense material there. If you want to go and say from previous lifetimes, there's a whole lot of shit, quote unquote, from this lifetime alone, let alone potential, all the genetic material. And there's 90+% of the material, the genes that we have, they call it junk DNA, that have no apparent function or reason, but they store memories and from our, from past and generations before us. It's so beautiful to experience the power of our breath. And what you spoke to earlier is, like weeds in a garden, weeds in our mind only need time to grow. And so it's having this, like, if you were to wear like blue colored tinted glasses your whole life, you would have not experienced the world in a blue color tint. You would adjust to seeing it, and you would project and think everybody else sees your reality as blue, right? And so allowing yourself to release and surrender and energetically shake off and work through what at one point didn't feel safe to your nervous system, but now you realize I'm grown, I've integrated the lesson, I understand the reason, and I can feel safe in being myself and loving myself and seeing myself. It's so powerful. There's this old Zen koan where like two fish are swimming in a big body of water, and a much older fish comes and swims by and says, "Hey boys, how's the water?" And the two fish go, "What water?" And it's not realizing the identity that we're currently operating within and the environment that we're operating within that is the cause for us getting and manifesting the reality that we've always known. It's after time and you gain age and wisdom where you can actually see that you're living in you can see from an expanded sense of view the reality in which you're living in. And so I just think that for me personally, I know for your journey and for many people, the power of it's the many ways in which we can alter, consciously change our breath to access deeper parts of ourselves, allow us to gain insight into what are those subtle compensation behaviors and adaptations that we've created as a result of not feeling safe, or some sort of belief that we've taken and that's about our inherent inadequacy. That's not true, but it is real within our experience. And if we don't gain awareness on it and actually move through it energetically, it's going to continue to define our life, whether or not we like it. And so we can try to operate within the logic and left brain to figuring out what the life that we want to create. But if there's these more deeper, subtle kind of architecture in which everything is happening, if you don't reconcile that, then no matter how much it's just like mental masturbation. You're just operating within the same shit and recycled material over and over again. So I think what we just touched on is so empowering and impactful for people to sit with and to join a breathwork class, have your own experience. You guys are doing really powerful work. And so thank you. And yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. I feel like this is just the beginning. I have no idea where it's going to go. I don't have a clear-cut plan, but I have a practice. I have a strategy that is guiding my life one day at a time, one moment at a time. And it's far surpassing what I would have imagined. So I'm going to keep going with it. And I hope that I can inspire people along the way to try listening to their intuition and seeing what happens as well. Yeah.
I think for most people, the mass human population are operating within a survival-minded consciousness of just like, I just want to get out of this pain and move through this trauma and feel some sort of happiness and peace for some part of my life. We spoke to a lot of that. Once you go deeper and deeper on the journey and you are on the path of integration and have these practices where you can cultivate a deeper inner knowing of self, then some more fun spiritual gifts can come online and you can have access to what seems as non-ordinary states of consciousness more ordinarily throughout your day-to-day life. And that could look like and manifest in many different ways. The yogic system has talked about the power of the cities and how they manifest differently within us. And so for you, how has it been, trusting and allowing some of those spiritual gifts to come online without the mind stopping you thinking this is ridiculous or judging it, whether it's allowing yourself to be a channel for other energies or, an expanded being or information or wisdom to come through you, or for whatever people, their spiritual gifts could look like a million different things. But how have you found acceptance for your own spiritual gifts and allowing them to come through?
That has been a process, especially if you just try on for a moment someone who really cares about what their daddy thinks of them and wants to be impressive and credible, and then has the awareness that the spiritual woo-woo out there channeling, deep diving it doesn't fit with that at all. In fact, it's the exact opposite in a way, right? So for me, it has felt like a really terrifying up and down journey. And what's interesting is, now I channel, and that's a part of my personal life first and foremost. It's something that is like very sacred to me. And then I do share it as well, and have been writing a book, and I share it with my clients. I do readings and so on. But lots of people along the way have said to me, I wish I could channel. And I am like the opposite. I wish I didn't channel. Now, I am not saying that that's how I feel right now. I'm very grateful that I can access what I can access and bring it through to serve. But it was not why I started. I didn't intend to start channeling. I didn't want to. And for about 8 years, I channeled in complete private, and I was really embarrassed about it, like deeply shameful about it, because I was afraid that people would think I was crazy. I felt like people might think that I was trying to get attention. I thought that people wouldn't take me seriously. And because I genuinely value the intellect as much as I value intuition, like I think both are super important, and I want to create a very grounded impact in my life, to me, that felt like it was too far out the deep end,
Yeah.
And so my way of coping, I guess, was to keep it private for a long time. And what I've recognized along the way is that people in my life who know me have known that I channel. Like if you get to know me well, you're going to know. And that has been really an essential part of unlocking safety in me, is the reflections of others. Sometimes this like applies to different areas. So for the listeners, let's say the old relationship one that I hear all the time. If you want to have an amazing relationship, you need to love yourself first before someone else can love you. I don't believe that at all. Sometimes another person's ability to see you helps you to see yourself. Yeah. And that's the beauty of being in a dance with life. And sometimes we have major blind spots, and our shadows are unconsciously driving our lives, as we've spoken about in this conversation. So for me, the people who I trust the most have been the ones who are like, this is special and it's sacred, and can you help me, and can you bring through something for me? Like my friends treat me like a magical oracle. And I am kind of humble to a fault sometimes, where I'll be like, it's nothing, like you've all got it inside of you. And I don't like having a lot of attention on me a lot of the time. But those reflections remind me that I do have a gift, and that when I open up that channel, it can be very potent. It can be very helpful for people. It can cut through the fluff and the BS. And it's a channel of expression that isn't guided by the linear. Like I can think that I'm going to get a certain answer and then I tune in and it's something completely different, like so left field. So yeah, to answer your question, it's been really challenging, but what calls me to keep going is the reflections of people who recognize the value. And then the other part of it is people who feel in the same way that I feel. And like, that's the power of a wounded healer in a way, is when you see someone suffering in the way that you've suffered, it calls you to serve. So for me, when I have people who are literally like in tears saying, I've never felt like I fit in. I've always felt like I'm alone. I've never felt like I'm from here. I feel like I'm from some other place, like literally another planet. Everyone around me thinks I'm weird. I feel like I have gifts to heal and to help. And like I'm here for some deeper purpose. And I don't know where to even go for answers or take it a notch further. And I have people who reach out to me quite frequently these days who are like, Helle, I've been contacted in my dreams by this extraterrestrial race. I literally don't know where to go to talk about it. Can you help me? And it's distressing. Like these are real challenges that people are going through in navigating their spiritual awakening and having information come through that's not of this world. And there's a major lack of resources for these experiences to be understood and integrated in a safe way. So when I have people like that reaching out to me, I'm like, get out of your way, Helle. Like, come on, this is not about you. You've got to step up and serve. And funnily enough, last night, it was all coming up. Of course it would before this conversation. You know, it's on point. It's always like a little rite of passage. And I was laying in bed and I was tuning in and I started to feel this really primitive kind of past life imagery coming into my awareness. And it was like, it's not safe to lead. And I've learned many different inquiry practices, and one of them that I love to work with is parts. So if there's a part of me that feels it is not safe to lead, then there is another part of me that's witnessing that and is like, huh, interesting. Like, what is that? And so you can kind of go into an internal inquiry process or conversation. And that's exactly what I did. So I was like, okay, what do you believe will happen if you lead? Listen, feel, find out. Yeah. And the answer that came through was, you will be cast out. And I was like, huh, okay. And it almost felt like some really old kingdom type energy. Yeah. And so I just kept going with this line of inquiry. And then it flipped into like not only being afraid of being cast out, but being afraid that I will cast out others if I lead. And then I sat with that and I was like, okay, how does it feel to acknowledge that you're afraid of casting out others? And I started laughing, kind of like uncontrollably. I was like, that's ridiculous. Like, I'm not going to cast out others. But you see how this little nugget of an unconscious program can fester in the psyche and in the body and have an enormous influence on how I show up. And then by just being curious, rather than being like, get over it, that's ridiculous, it's safe to lead, going in a bit deeper allows it to kind of flip and transform. And what that does is it closes the loop. Yeah. So I got to that place last night where I was laughing and I was like, how funny that I've been thinking that I'm afraid of being cast out, but actually underneath that is a recognition that I have been one to cast out others, maybe in other lifetimes. Maybe I've been like some leader that was really harsh and I'm afraid to repeat that. And by giving myself permission to go through that, I was like, you're not there anymore. Like, you're good. You're so not that. It's actually ridiculous. It's laughable. And that is the power of inquiry and freeing yourself a little bit at a time. But I've had to accept that I'm not going to fully and completely feel free, and I can still take action.
Yeah.
So to close that out, my little answer there is you don't have to have all the answers or feel completely confident or be fully out of the spiritual closet, let's say, to do something. And know that you're going to evolve and it's going to get easier. And like my relationship with leadership is an example of that. It's going to change over time. But I have the ability within me, clearly, over the last decade to lead some people. I've been doing all right.
Yeah.
And now it's like, cool, like what's next?
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's see.
Yeah. It's that next level of expansion that then becomes available.
Yeah.
I'm just so excited for you and to see you continue to step into your voice and leadership and power, because I personally just feel like very strongly in the strong call to be a platform, an individual who protects and propagates and supports these deep feminine mystery oracles and witches and teachers to come online, because it's been so suppressed and shamed for so long.
Yeah.
And it's no wonder that you have felt that, because it's been a real thing in history, you know? And so whether or not we want to place a label of it actually being another lifetime or whatever, it's still within the unconscious of humanity right now. And I think that right now in the age of information, where we're stepping into these conversations being accessible by so many people, you're going to find so many people that continue to resonate and feel what you're saying and say, hey, that's me too. I've been having these, these insights, these weird moments. And that becomes a safety net in which people can find each other and feel that sense of family. And I think it's just so important and needed as the healing shift on this planet occurs. So I support you so much.
Thank you. I feel it.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. We all need, it's what I've been saying this whole time. We need the masculine and the feminine. Like the feminine needs the masculine right now. We need to have men who are supporting the feminine to flourish like you are. We need to have that within ourselves, where we use our action taking and our voices and our expression and our boundaries to protect what's sacred within us. So thank you. We're in it.
We're in it.
We've come a long way, even in 10 years. I mean, the fact that we're having this conversation right now is signs of the times.
So good. And I think it's important in speaking the language of the modern times. It's not always fully necessary to even say that you claim to know where a source of information is coming, like I'm channeling the Arcturians, or like, I think the strong barometer of whether or not it's truth is that, is the wisdom or information that's coming through, is it moving the needle within people's experience? Is it impactful? And I don't care if it came from a homeless person on the street or from an alien from a different dimension. Like ultimately it's like, okay, is this actually changing anyone's reality?
Yeah, the fortune cookie wisdom.
Right. So ultimately I do feel the truth and resonance in individuals who can tap into non-embodied beings or, alien extraterrestrial races or whatever. And ultimately, I don't know how even necessary it is to have any belief. It's just like, okay, this is what's coming through me, whether it's a deep part of myself that is within my unconscious that is unveiling this information, or I'm connecting with an actual external source of energy. Ultimately, it's like, what's the wisdom? What's the information here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So good. Now, just a deep breath. If you have been listening to this whole podcast, kudos to you.
Yep.
This has been so nourishing and fulfilling for myself. I want to transition as we kind of go into, sometimes I do a rapid fire round of questions. I want to do a channel time round of questions.
Let's go.
And before we do that, because we were talking so much about practices, whether it's 30 seconds or a few minutes, would you guide us and the listeners just through some breaths or through a practice to just ground ourselves deeper into this next kind of part, rounding out the podcast?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. I have no plan.
Great.
I'm just going to see what comes through. So what I will say is that if you are driving, you will want to skip this part, okay? And no operating heavy machinery. Disclaimer.
Yeah.
So please get yourself into a comfortable, relaxed position. And when you're ready, you can close down your eyes. Or if it doesn't feel comfortable to close down your eyes right now, then you can land your gaze somewhere close to the floor. And I want you to focus on your breathing. There's nothing to change. Just start to notice the feeling of the breath flowing in and out. And it's fairly likely that as you bring your focus to the breath, it starts to change. So if it's going a little deeper, allow that to happen. And as you track your breath in and out, start to notice where in the body the breath is going. Is it going into the chest? Is it going into the belly? Is it going into the sides of the body, the ribs? And just exploring, is it going into the back? Is your back expanding in any way as you breathe in? Is it contracting or drawing in, relaxing down as you exhale? We're now going to expand the focus to explore sensations in the body. And in particular, I want you to notice if there's anywhere in your body that feels tight or tense. First acknowledging it with your intention, with your attention. And inviting that area of your body to relax. And this includes softening the face, the mouth, your jaw. Letting go of all effort through your neck and shoulders. Allowing your arms to soften all the way through your hands to your fingertips. And as you scan your body and the sensations, relaxing through your chest and your upper back. Letting your belly soften. Relaxing through your pelvis and your hips. Allowing everything to become a little looser, a little more open through your legs. And if at any point you feel like you need to adjust yourself to feel more open and comfortable, you can do that. Letting go and relaxing all the way through your legs. Even allowing your posture to soften a little bit. Whole body, giving yourself permission to soften. And once again, checking in with the breath. Nothing to change, nothing to strive for or fix. Just be with the breath. Draw your focus now up inside your head, around your brow point, bringing your inner gaze to this area around your brow point, focusing in the center of your head for a moment as you breathe. We're just going to practice some affirmations in silence. And the first affirmation is, I give myself permission to see. So you can repeat this silently as you focus around this brow point. I give myself permission to see. Then you can bring your internal gaze up to the top of your head, feeling the sensation of that top part of your head. You might call it your crown. Holding your focus there as you breathe. No breath holding, just allowing the breath to flow. And we've got another affirmation here. I give myself permission to know. I give myself permission to know. We're now going to bring our inner gaze to the chest area around the heart space. And this is optional, but if you feel like it, you're welcome to place your hands on your chest or one hand, or you can just keep them relaxed. Most importantly is holding your inner gaze, your focus, feeling sensations in your heart space, your chest, and breathe. And our affirmation here is, I give myself permission to feel. I want you to take a deep breath here, into the chest, into the heart space. Hold it for a moment. Let it go whenever you're ready. Relaxing your hands down if you've had them up by your chest, your heart. And our last one is we're going to bring our inner gaze, our focus, to the throat. Breathing and feeling the breath pass through the throat on each inhale and exhale. And our affirmation here is, I give myself permission to express. I give myself permission to express. Allowing your gaze now to relax, be with the sensations of your full body. And just for fun, we're going to shift the breath for just a little bit, less than a minute. I want to do a few breaths with you in a different pattern. So we'll be breathing in through the mouth and out through the mouth. And it's just deep and full breaths, okay? Quality, deep breaths. No pause between the inhale or the exhale. So it goes like this. Join me when you're ready. Hold your focus as you're breathing at your brow point. Charging up your body with energy. A few more. One more deep breath in. And on the exhale, exhale out fully and hold. Let your body adjust, do whatever you need to do, holding the breath. Holding for a few moments more. Be in the stillness. Create space. Trust the space. You are safe in the space. Inhale through your nose. Exhale through nose or mouth. Feel your feet and the sensations of being in your seat. When you're ready, blink your eyes open. Arrive in this new moment.
Thank you so much. So beautiful, so good. It's crazy how, just how deep you can go in such a short amount of time.
Right.
With the breath. The breath
creating the space. Yeah.
The breath is the bridge. It's so powerful. Amazing. Okay. Let's get into it. Let me know whenever you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. We can pretend the mics and cameras aren't here. Just whatever comes through, allow it to come through.
Of course.
All right. What is one overlooked character trait or behavior that prevents people from living to their full potential?
The most overlooked way of being is the pattern of understanding that what you are is more than this form. If you identify only with your physical form, you limit yourself to a state of expression that is far less than who you could be if you lived in an oscillating state of expression and internal contemplation and receptivity to what exists beyond you, which is ultimately where you come from.
What is one of the most important qualities a human can possess?
The quality of dwelling in the heart is an asset that would exponentially amplify your life. To be in the heart as a filter of perception, as well as a filter of expression, would allow you to experience far greater levels of connection and therefore creativity, collaboration, diffusion of conflict, and peace.
Why do you feel source consciousness has divided itself in so many ways? Why is there so much differentiation?
If all exists, and that is a difficult concept for you to entertain, the only way for all to be experienced in its full fruitfulness and diversity would be to divide into further and further detail what is ultimately all-encompassing. It is in the details that you discover the richness and potency of both simplicity and complexity. There isn't one particular reason that we can offer right now as to why this is. However, we may say, why not? Everything is simultaneously being divided, compartmentalized, and analyzed under a microscope through your lived experience. And it is in a state of completion, undivided, whole, ever-present, resting in a state of knowing of itself. You are experiencing one side of a coin, and the other side simultaneously exists. To perceive through time is to focus on the experience you are currently having. To pop out of time is to recognize that it is all occurring, and therefore nothing has been destroyed. You are in a state of analysis of yourself.
What is wisdom, and how is it different than knowledge?
Our perception of this is that knowledge is wisdom. This is a matter of interpretation or translation determined by language to some degree. Ultimately, true knowledge equates to wisdom. Many human beings have confused information with knowledge. And therefore, what you are potentially asking is, what is the difference between information and wisdom? Wisdom is highly ordered, coherent information.
What is largely at the root as to why so many people are afraid?
You are afraid because you identify with a fractal of what you actually are. And this we could describe as being similar to witnessing a crumb falling to the floor and believing that you are losing yourself or your creation while you hold in your palm an entire loaf of bread. If you identify heavily with the fractal that you currently find yourself occupying, that which is your human body, then you will naturally stress yourself out because you are a ticking time bomb, in a sense, on your way to evaporation, like the falling crumb. And this is why it is advised, not required, but advised, that you have a practice that bridges you into a state of connection with your source. Your stress will be at least minimized if you know yourself as more than this human body. The more you identify with this human body, the more you become afraid. You become afraid of losing that which you accumulate. You become afraid of not reaching a certain point of achievement or status or connection with other human beings. You simultaneously live in a state of constant recognition of your own impermanence while attempting to deny it and run away from it. This is a state of deep, overpowering inner conflict that leads to inflammation, not only of the body, but the mind and the soul. Inflammation is a state of becoming overfull. Your minds are inflamed because you are afraid that without what you accumulate at a mental level and without what you grasp onto at a physical level, you will be empty, meaningless, and ultimately non-existent. The very same fears manifest in a different way when a human being goes into a state of fasting. We could call this temporary starvation of the physical body by not consuming food. The body and the mind will go through waves of fear of emptiness. But it is in the emptiness that you find new layers of yourself. There is a regeneration that occurs in the emptiness. The same goes for the breath. We witness again and again that in these breath holds, as individuals practice breathwork, these subtle level fears arise to the surface of not being okay if nothing is happening. Well, that is a limited view of yourself and your existence. So many of you are, in fact, so afraid of dying. We invite you into the idea that death is much more than rebirth. Death is relaxation of everything that you have been grasping to that you believe makes you something. Death is the opportunity to arrive in relaxation and knowing of what you already are and have always been. And there is nothing scary about that. There is only the anticipation that comes with your ideas of that. But your ideas that initiate or incite a state of fear within you are inaccurate. This is not to say that we encourage anyone to leap toward death in any way. Please enjoy to the fullest this experience that you have, for this analysis that you have of yourself is an opportunity of rich learning. And if you attempt to escape it, you will only be brought back into it once again to repeat it, for it is a necessary experience that God wishes to have through you. But do not fear death. And you may say, well, that is easy to think about as an idea, but what about to believe it? How do we believe it? How do we feel that state of freedom from fear of death? And that is a path that you must decide to take or not take, to decide if that is important to you, as has been spoken about in this conversation. If it does not matter to you to open a conversation with the divine, then you will not do it. And you will have the ideas that you have, and they may serve you or they may not. But if you wish to create a transformation there, if that is something that you require, if there is a belief or a feeling that is not serving you, then this is an invitation to create your own conversation with that which you will find when you no longer exist as this. And through that process, we promise you peace. If you are willing to listen and to know at the level of wisdom, not just at the level of information. That requires more than looking in your three-dimensional reality. That is a conversation that requires internal time, internal space, internal work to go beyond oneself. The doorway to get there is from inside.
Why is there so much poverty and suffering in the world?
Human beings have become addicted to separation. In some sense, you could say that this is a reflection of the very purpose of wholeness dividing itself into detail. There are those of you who have become masters of division, and that is what you see. Those who have taken it upon themselves consciously and unconsciously to divide. And much of this, as has been spoken about, is driven by fear. Fear that if I do not control this, if I do not control the people around me, if I do not control this territory, then we will not survive. And if we do not survive here, then we will not exist. The paradox, if you like, is that the more you understand that you exist beyond this, the more you will master how you exist in this. The more attached you are to your existence in this, the more destructive your energies and behaviors become in this. And that is because fear will lead you to irrational acts of casting out that which could be your ally, that which could be your friend, your neighbor, your family. Fear blocks the ability to recognize opportunities as well as capabilities outside of oneself. In a state of survival, many may choose to grasp to whatever information they have and whatever resources they have that are the most easily accessible or reliable through the lens of logic. Fear will lead to undermining potential. This is an important point to tie together the conversation that has been had today. when we do not trust others, we are not trusting potential. And we are living in the state of the known rather than being open to God, Source, the divine, working through not only ourselves, but through others and through the environment. Many of the most controlling people on your planet have closed themselves off from creativity and imagination, and therefore possibility, spirituality, and survival beyond their physical form. And so they are fighting for their life, literally. They are fighting for what they perceive as their morsel of existence, forgetting that they are playing so small. And we do not say this to judge or to diminish, for it creates contrast in your reality that can be of value in the analysis process where God experiences and understands itself through a variety of lived experiences. However, there are possibilities, there are potentials that exist for human beings to relate to one another from a place of far greater respect and reverence for differences. And therefore, in respecting differences, there can also be a respect for not only the known, but the unknown, the yet to be understood. And in that, more trust can be handed over to co-create rather than to control and annihilate.
What would support humanity most in the collective raising consciousness in this time?
Heart-centered practices are the primary objective of this particular time that you find yourselves in. We are witnessing that humanity is in a stage of development which must still be identified with the self primarily. Some of you who may be described as light workers or leaders wish to spend much of your time at the level of spiritual contemplation and existential questioning. Some of you desire to go home to where you came from. And if this is your calling and is genuinely inspiring to you, then receive that as your personal practice. However, we ask that you consider that it is not appropriate for everyone to be where you are or to be contemplating at the level that you are contemplating right now. That would be skipping ahead of a necessary unfolding. And in fact, on a collective level, the next stage of opening in the direction of peace and greater unity and harmony is to explore through the heart. And this includes exploring matters such as emotions, normalizing feeling. The heart is also what governs inclusion, and you see this in your collective right now, that there is a rising movement around inclusivity and honoring diversity in individual self-expression. This is useful. This is appropriate to the stage that you're in. Now, everyone has their place, and some are going to devote their entire lives to giving back to humanity or contributing in various ways that may not be considered directly related to the heart. For example, not everyone is here to encourage feeling emotions or practicing more inclusion. The heart way is something that every individual has the opportunity to cultivate inside by healing that which is hurting and developing the ability to listen and not fix, but to be a space of possibility for something to unfold naturally in its own timing. This would be considered more of a feminine principle. Some would call it holding space. Instead of projecting and inserting your own agendas on others or telling them how they should be and how they should act and what they should let go of or embrace, the heart is a guiding force in allowing. The heart is curious. And when we exist in a state of heart consciousness, each individual's energy system will move blockages out through the heart space through social connection, through physical practices in the body, and through emotional releases in their own timing. One thing that is very important for each of you to understand is that you have no idea what individuals within your collective are going through in private. Human beings are suffering. There is an enormous emotional purge occurring on your planet right now. The extent of outward seeking through platforms such as social media, mediums such as the internet, is an exact reflection of the desire to distract oneself from the inevitable purge. The more human beings can allow space for the emotional purge to move through the heart space and for authentic connections to be cultivated, the more quickly this stage of your collective evolution will move. Now, this is not to say that there is a rush or a deadline on this process. However, each of you who are listening right now desire to facilitate the movement of this energy in your own unique way. And so you need to be honest with yourself about where you are becoming distracted and trying to numb yourself or busy yourself when your heart is trying to help you. Many of you make your sadness and your loneliness and your frustrations and your fears of connection wrong. These nudges or impulses of feedback that come through the heart energy field, let's say, are wanting to move. But every time you distract yourself from your honest feeling and releasing and embracing of your own experience in private, of your own emotions, desires, fears, needs, every time you avoid that, you place it in a state of suspension. God, source, the divine, whatever you want to call it, will wait. God will wait. God will wait for you. It is easy to be a preacher of noble truths. It is easy to point the finger and tell people what they should be doing. It is far easier to recognize the unresolved and unexpressed pain and passions and purpose and desires of another individual than it is to sit in the fire of being with your own. God will wait. You may think that you can play a game of hide and seek with God and distract yourself from being honest. God will wait. Like a parent and a child, you oscillate between desiring to feel invisible, to get away with your antics, and to be the center of attention. And you, in a way, are the child of God, you could call it. You are the child of the universe, of source of creation. And sometimes you desire to be invisible and to cut yourself off from this connection and this, what can feel like an obligation at times, to be honest with your own lived experience and your own natural impulses to awaken and evolve. However, what happens is that when you ignore yourself for enough time, just like with a child, you start to go into tantrums and fits of feeling neglected and unseen and ignored or punished and given unfair treatment because all you crave is that loving embrace. So play your games and explore your experience, and there is no rush, but also do not kid yourself into thinking that God doesn't see you and God isn't working through you and your life. You are not invisible. You are a part of the tapestry of this universe. And your peace, your expression, your progress, your acceptance is a part of the deal. It's a part of the inevitable. You are becoming something that you cannot see yet. And by allowing this mystery to love you and nurture you and guide you like a parent would a child, while you also allow yourself freedom to play and have fun and enjoy the novelties of your human experience, you will reach your desired destination. And we will complete here by saying that deep down, although you may fight it and resist it and experience struggle a lot of the time, and you may drag your heels and kick and scream along the way, this is ultimately your desire to create and express and evolve and awaken and find your way home. Okay, we win now.
We did. Wow. That was so powerful.
Thanks.
Thank you for being willing to go there and for vulnerably sharing and opening up your channel, and just know that it's fully received by me and those that are listening, and that this is a safe space.
Yes, I feel it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Wow, there is so much to digest from this episode.
I'm gonna have to listen back to that one.
Yeah, many times. Wow. Is there anything else on your heart that you want to share before we start to wrap up here?
I just want to say massive love to everyone. Thanks for being a part of the conversation. And, we can dive super deep, but we can also switch right back in a second to being in our human experiences.
Yep.
And I want you all to know that you can be very, very tapped into your genius and still be you. It's not one or the other. You don't have to become a character or find your way into being this version that you think is going to be that version of you that's tapped into the infinite. You already are exactly as you are. It's just the practices that bridge that gap. So here we are right here and now, human as fuck and tapped in.
Yeah. So good. So good. You're so badass. And the ability to balance both is so beautiful and so needed. Is there anything that you want to speak to in terms of the source of the connection that you have when you're channeling?
Yeah, sure. Well, I have been channeling the Arcturians for over a decade now. That's primarily where I connect into. However, sometimes I honestly just feel like I'm speaking from the field. It's a part of my higher self, or I'm speaking almost God. I'm just a voice for that force of nature that is observing us and being like, here you go, this is what I see. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So I can tap into many different things. I can communicate with people who have passed over and different star races and plants, mushrooms, all sorts. But yeah, primary connection would be Arcturians.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to speak into that.
I'm sure someone listening will be like, oh my God, I feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Is there anything on your heart in terms of what you're creating in the planet right now that you want to direct people to, where people can find you and get connected with this human Helle?
Yeah, for sure. So we have an app called Awaken Breathwork Virtual Studio, and you can find that in the App Store. And we have guided classes that we release every week where you can do breathwork. It's for all sorts: intuition, calm, reducing stress, manifestation, all sorts. It's a practical tool that you can bring into your daily life, or you could do it a few times a week. That is a great way to go. It's affordable. You can access it from anywhere. All you need is a phone or a computer. And I think it's probably the most relevant based on the conversation we've had, because it's about practices and creating, 10, 20, 30 minutes, an hour a day. That's how you become that bridge and get that genius juice flowing.
Yeah, so good. Thank you so much. You're such an incredible human being. And I'm so excited to continue on this journey together and both weaving and co-creating and these platforms that we're supporting and creating for people to come in and tap back into this knowing that they feel. But, it's just such an important thing to have these safe spaces where people can land and deepen. And so thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you for being the container for the depth to flow.
Totally received. And for everybody that's been tuning in to this epic, deep, juicy episode on the Know Thyself podcast, thank you for coming on this journey. Thank you for exploring these curiosities. Thank you for tapping into the feeling of the direction you want to go into and not just where the mind wants to take you. If you had any big epiphanies, breakthroughs, downloads, uploads, please let us know in the description below, in the comments. We'd be super curious to hear. Everything where you can find Helle and everything she's doing with Awaken Breathwork, you can find down linked in the description below. Please subscribe if you haven't. We're building an amazing community here. And until next time, be well.